So this is going to be my NFL 2022 Week 7 review and recap, part of a series of videos I do for the NFL week by week, where I go through all the games, the big picture takeaways, the big things that happen, and all that kinds of good stuff. So we'll actually start off with Thursday, the Thursday night game for this Week 7, Saints at Cardinals. The big thing of this one for the Cardinals was it was the return of DeAndre Hopkins. They really did need him because they were definitely stinking it up with their 2-4 record. And they were stinking it up for about the first bit of this game until they got two unbelievable big-time pick sixes that really turned the tide in this game. The Saints were dominating this game, and then they essentially gave the game away. One of the interceptions wasn't Andy Dalton's fault. The second one definitely was, and before you knew it, it was definitely the game in favor of the Cardinals. There was also the big screaming match between Kyler Murray and Cliff Kingsbury. Kyler Murray, he's definitely a handful to be the coach of, man, because his kind of personality, his kind of leadership styles, is kind of like, do I really want to coach this dude? And for Cliff Kingsbury, he got the job because of his relationship with Kyler Murray, his ability to coach Kyler Murray. So if he doesn't have that in his favor, then there's really no point in him having the job. But we'll see if the Cardinals can jumpstart their season now that they got Hopkins back. As for the Saints, doesn't look so good for them. Next up, for the Sunday slate of games, the first game we have here was Browns at the Ravens. Ravens ended up winning this one 23-20. It was another game that the Ravens almost blew. I mean, had they blown this game, another sort of big lead, it would have been like, oh my God, you got to be kidding me. You can write curtains for them if they had blown this one again. But they're able to win this game, a good sort of division rivalry or win that they got. As for the Browns, they're starting to really kind of sputter. And by the time they get Watson back, if they continue on this path, it won't really make a big difference. And now for one of the big upsets that we had, Buccaneers at the Saints, or Buccaneers at the Panthers is the next game. And this was supposed to be a get-right game for the Buccaneers. Obviously, the Panthers are probably the worst team in the league right now in terms of their record, the fact that they're just giving players away. They had just traded Christian McCaffrey, and they won this one 21-3. The Buccaneers offense has just been terrible this season. The only time they had a decent offensive showing was against the Chiefs, and that's a little misleading because they were down like double possession, 2 possessions for every single game, for every single score that they went down. But yeah, when you look at it, I mean, obviously they did have a huge Mike Evans just easy touchdown that he just dropped, but that's no excuse for the performance they put on. And as for their team outlook, like I said, this was supposed to be a get-right game, and it was anything but. And right now, Giselle is laughing all the way to the bank. I'll put it that way. So, that was a really bad result for them. And as for their next game coming up, well, I'll get to that at the end. But it's not looking so easy for their next game coming up this Thursday night. Next game we got is Falcons at the Bengals. Bengals won this one 35-17. Not all that surprising, even though the Falcons have definitely been a lot better than anyone would have thought that this was definitely the Bengals game, and they took care of it as such. Our next game is Lions at the Cowboys. The Cowboys won this one 24-6. The big thing with this one was that it was the turn of Dak Prescott after he had, there's sort of a little bit of mini sort of as they're going to start keep with Cooper Rush. But after Cooper Rush's last outing against Philadelphia, even though it wasn't all totally his fault, it was kind of like okay, time to go back to Dak. But now you have Dak back in the saddle. And, the team honestly was not looking great through a lot of this game. But the Cowboys were able to pull away at the end. I think for them, it's just a matter of keeping with the formula that did make them successful over that 4-game win streak they had when they did have Cooper Rush. And if they can do that with Dak, even though I'm not really the biggest Dak fan, I think he's a little overrated. They definitely have more potential offensively with him in the lineup. So they can get that going, and they'll continue to be a top contender in the NFC, mainly because it is so open. As for the Lions, I think the sort of whole thing with Dan Campbell's likability is just kind of gone. I mean, for me, that was gone when they had that 48-45 loss versus Seattle. And it's like, really? Your defense is that bad? And then they followed up the week after, getting blown out by New England 29-0, back when New England had basically no expectations offensively, and they get shut out like that. I think this will be his last season with the Lions, just because I think his act is kind of done. Next game, we got the Giants at the Giants, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Giants at the Jaguars in Jacksonville. Giants won another game that they pulled out, 23-17. Just Give Brian Daboll Coach of the Year right now. What he's doing with this team is just absolutely unbelievable in terms of the stuff that he's doing. And then the next game, another big time result. Packers at the Commanders. Packers won this game Commanders won this game 23-21. Like the Buccaneers game, this was supposed to be another sort of get right game for the Packers in terms of them, getting an easy win against an inferior team. Granted, this one was on the road also, but the Commanders, even though the Packers were actually up in this game, Commanders were able to get it out 23-21, and Green Bay has now lost 3 in a row after a 3-1 start. But this isn't all that surprising, just because you looked at that Green Bay roster, at least I did, and it's just like, yeah, I don't think this team's really going to have it going through the season in terms of what they're doing. And you see how things are sort of going for them right now. It's just like, yeah, Aaron Rodgers' kind of leadership style and what he's kind of going through, the team that got around him, the rookie receivers, it's just a formula for just a recipe for disaster. And it's starting to turn into a disaster. And when you see who they got coming up next Sunday night, I don't think it's going to get much better. Next up, Colts versus Titans, another AFC South matchup, my favorite type of matchups, not. But granted, the big thing with this one in terms of the slate of games, this was the only matchup between two winning teams. And with how everyone thinks about the AFC South, me included, you wouldn't think this would be a very exciting game, and it wasn't, but the Titans were able to win this one 19-10 after sort of a, kind of middling or not very good start by the Titans. They're actually living up to my prediction because I did pick them to win this division, even though the Colts were the trendy pick, and right now they're sitting at 5-2, I believe. So yeah, they're kind of pulling out the same kind of magic they did last year. Granted, I don't think they'll be a number 1 seed again, but I guess they're putting themselves in a position to where, you never know. Our next game is Texans at the Raiders, a game that the Raiders absolutely had to have, which is why I'm pretty sure everyone picked them in this game, and they did. They ended up winning 38-20. They were coming off the sort of another disappointing loss in Kansas City, but this was a get-right game that actually went in favor of them, unlike what the Packers and the Packers and the Buccaneers did this week. So they got the win, 38-20. We'll see what they could do going forward, but they're definitely already behind the 8 ball in that division, even though that division is honestly not turning out to being as strong as what everyone thought it would be. Next game of the slate, Jets at Broncos. Jets won this one in Denver, 16-9. I guess the big thing with this one is that Russell Wilson did not play. He has a shoulder injury, or no, I think it was a hamstring injury, what they mentioned for this one. But yeah, this is turning out to be an absolute disaster of a season for them. With Wilson, they weren't playing well anyway, and now they're down to like a 2-5 record. Yeah, it's going to get very, very ugly for them, regardless of if Wilson comes back or not. As for the Jets, 5-2. Who the hell saw that coming? I sure as hell didn't. So they're doing great stuff. Granted, it's really all with their defense, their offense. They've just taken the ball completely out of Zach Wilson's hands. So they are clearly doing it, leaning on one side of the ball. They do have a defensive coach, but 5-2 record. Hey, look what Robert Saleh said a few weeks ago in terms of taking receipts of everyone that was doubting them. Well, they're definitely proving people wrong in this case. 5-2 record. So there you go. Probably the best matchup on paper for the day was the game, the sort of main highlight game of the Sunday slate, America's Game of the Week. And that was Chiefs at the 49ers, where the Chiefs won this one 44-23. Now, granted, that score is a little misleading. It was actually a pretty competitive game through most of it, to where, in fact, the 49ers were actually up 10-0 towards the early part of the game. Now, granted, being up 10-0 against the Chiefs means absolutely nothing unless the final clock in the fourth quarter is 0-0, just because they are the kings of the comeback, specifically Mahomes. They were able to win this one as they sort of put on an offensive show through the rest of the game once they were down 10-0. And you look at the numbers, even though the 49ers do have a great defense, it wasn't great in this game because they got absolutely shredded for like over 500 yards. And yeah, the Chiefs basically did whatever they wanted to after being down. The 49ers, people do think of them as a contender, and I do also, but they are sitting at a 3-4 record, so they have to pick it up, even if the AFC is a little down. And I guess I did not mention that they do have Christian McCaffrey now, who they traded for, and they actually did play a few series in this game. He did not play, I don't believe, in the second half, just because they only had a limited amount of plays for him. He just got there. But that would definitely help them also, and it's wise of them to push all their chips to the middle of the table, as we keep mentioning that the NFC is so just like wide open. And you look on paper, that roster, it is great. It's great everywhere except quarterback. Jimmy Garoppolo is just he still is limited, even though he has done a good job for that team. But you see that if they were special at quarterback, oh my God, it would be game over. You would definitely pick them to win the NFC and probably be the favorites for the whole championship. And then the final game of the regular Sunday slate, Seahawks at the Chargers. Seahawks won this one in LA, 37-23. A bit surprising, I guess, just because people still have their perception of, the Chargers are going to be lightning and just like, well, no pun intended, but they're going to be just like an, oh my God, just great team. And yeah, the Chargers, it just doesn't feel right. Granted, they are dealing with some injuries, specifically for Justin Herbert right now. He's clearly banged up, but it just does not feel right with the Chargers right now. And, I've said this before, but if they miss the playoffs again this year with Herbert, being the kind of prospect everyone, knows that he is, it'll be game over for that coach. As for a coach who is proving a lot of people wrong, Pete Carroll, my goodness, you talk about a divorce that's really working out in one person's favor quite lopsidedly, unlike sort of the Brady Belichick divorce. What he's doing without Russell Wilson in terms of how the offense is playing, the spirit of the team, all that kind of stuff. I mean, who would have thought that they would be in position, being in the top record in the NFC West, which granted no one's really playing great in that division right now, but still a 4-3 record. That's just fantastic stuff for them. So he would definitely, Dable will get coach of the year, but for a close consideration, obviously depending on how this rest of the season goes, got to give it to Pete Carroll, at least right now. The Sunday night game, which, from the look of it, that's the start, did not look like a great Sunday night matchup. It was kind of an odd one that they scheduled. Steelers at the Dolphins. Granted, I guess it did have the whole thing with Brian Flores being back in Miami after his whole firing controversy or whatever and lawsuit. But that didn't have much bearing on the sort of actual game, X's and O's of this game. And it seemed like the Dolphins got off to a hot start in this game, and it seemed like it might be okay. At halftime, the score was 16-10, and the final score was 16-10. The second half was pretty ugly, and there was a lot of dropped interceptions in this game. Just was not the prettiest Sunday night football game or showcase for the NFL on that kind of stage. But I guess it was still, I hadn't really seen Kenny Pickett play a full game, so it was interesting to see him. He made some rookie plays, I'll put it that way, especially his final pass at the end. But, all in all, I think the Dolphins definitely needed this win. They had Tua Tagovailoa back. They had gone a three-game losing streak without him. And all honesty, it was a little surprising when I was hearing that he was going to start earlier last week, just with the fact that everyone made it seem that he might be done for the rest of the year. But I'm glad he's still back. He's back flinging that football. Hopefully they can get their season back on track, because it was a fun story having them got off to the blazing start that they were. Specifically him, he was playing really well. So see if they can continue that momentum, and they still have a good chance to be a playoff team. As for the Steelers, it's all about Pickett's development. So as with last week, at the time I'm recording this, there has not, obviously the Monday night game has not happened yet. I'm recording this Sunday night. We have Bears at Patriots for the next game. What's very interesting is that I don't believe I've seen an actual confirmation of who's starting for the Patriots at QB, Mac Jones or Bailey Zappi. There was some kind of headline last week that said, report that I saw on NFL Live on ESPN, that if Mac Jones is healthy, that he will play. I don't know about that. With Bailey Zappi playing as well that he was, you kind of feel like, well, you kind of just stick with him and ride it out, just because the offense has just really taken off with him. And under Mac Jones this year, it was just looking terrible. They were looking at probably a bottom 4 record, and it was Zappi that got them back on track. So just to go back to Mac, I don't think he's done enough to really kind of earn that sort of automatic, here's your job back, go have fun. So we'll see. But either way, they should definitely be favorites in this game, just because the Bears offensively, another team it's just ugly to watch. And granted, this is not the best Monday night football matchup, but even still, I think the Patriots should probably take the one for tomorrow. So we'll see if I end up being right. So there you go with the results for week 7 in the NFL. We're already halfway, or almost halfway through the season anyway. I guess the big story and sort of the big thing you'll see on all of the, talking head shows tomorrow or today at the time you're recording it, if you've already watched it, is, talking about the Buccaneers and Packers, two teams that, we thought would be big time contenders led by legendary QBs, and they were just, sputtering. It is not good. Granted, I do think the Buccaneers' problems are a bit more solvable. As for the Packers, unless they have some personnel changes, it's gonna stay ugly, and it's worse than even I thought. Just because I thought they would still be a playoff team. Granted, I thought there'd be a wild card and Minnesota would win the division, but it's just definitely not looking good for them at all. So there you go. Now I mentioned teasing some of the Sunday night or the slate for Week 8, and for the Thursday night game, it's a really good one. Ravens at the Buccaneers. I originally thought it was in Baltimore, but it's in Tampa Bay. Either way, the Ravens are definitely playing much better football than the Buccaneers. I mean, the Ravens have been up in all of their games, and they gave away 3 of them, double-digit leads in the fourth quarter. But that should be a really interesting Thursday night game. Definitely the best one matchup-wise we've had in a while, probably since the opening one with the Chargers at Chargers at the Chiefs. So that should be really good. And then the Sunday night game, I mean, who doesn't want to see? Granted, this has the potential to be a big-time blowout. Buccaneers at Buffalo Bills. But who isn't curious to see if the Packers can get back on track? Granted, I don't think it's going to happen in dramatic fashion. But watching this game, hey, I'm still going to watch it. Should be a very interesting matchup to see unfold. So there you go. So there's my review and recap for Week 7. Like I said, I'll do another one for Week 8 coming up. The interesting stuff that I just mentioned for some of the games coming up next week. So if you made it to the end of this particular video, thank you for watching.